Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Trollspellet's live stream. Today we are going to follow the stream or something, and we are going to have a look at stirrups or no stirrups. What's the deal with that? And of course, we are here as usual to spoil the fun and say that there's no such thing as a free lunch. You can use one thing for one thing and the other for something else, and both are probably pretty good. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. We often hear, when we're talking about seat training and training to get a better seat, people are saying, oh no, I don't want to sit in the lunge and without stirrups, that is boring, and I always get more pain after doing that.
Yeah.
And we say, but you can, there are other ways to train your seat. We just want to say that that kind of seat training might be good, and it might be troublesome. It depends on the body of the rider and a little on the horse, and yeah, it depends.
It depends.
So what we're gonna try to do today is to show some, like there was 6 different horses and riders, and look at them and see why it's efficient for some of the riders to ride without stirrups, and why some of them would benefit from the stirrups a little more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So to sort of decode it a little bit, even from the start, what we're trying to do, most people are trying to do when they ride without stirrups. The idea is to sort of lengthen your legs or your muscles, or lengthen your seat, some people even say, and become looser so that you can allow the horse to move freer. And this is, of course, an excellent thing. If riding without stirrups does that for you, then by all means do that. However, in some specific cases, which is what we often work with, specific cases where there are specific problems or specific qualities we need to strengthen, it might be that working with or riding without the stirrups will provoke a fault that isn't there, or strengthen a fault that's already established in that rider's seat. Also, with regards to how the horse will move, that can make a difference. So we will have a look at different horses, as Hanne says, different riders, and we'll see if we can make sense out of this. That is mostly what this hour of theoretical talk is about.
Yep. Shall we start with a video of a good rider with a horse that hasn't got any problems, to see how it should look, or not perfect, but it's a good example.
It's a good example. Let's see,
like the 0001
number 1
video. That is my daughter that is riding, and we have put a towel underneath her so that it's easy to see the angles. This is an old video, like for more than 10 years ago, so it's a little rusty, and the quality is like not so good, but the riding is good. And there you can see that she's posting, and then she's sitting down, and you can see that her foot is underneath the hip joint. The ankle, the knee, and the hip joint are moving like relaxedly, and her upper body is straight and balanced, and the elbow has this nice angle.
Yep.
And
this is very nice. This is typical of when we get to this level, quite often I'll just turn away and teach someone else.
Yes. You don't need to say anything.
Of course, we're not trying to say here that, oh, this horse is moving perfectly and there's nothing wrong, and this rider is moving perfectly and there's nothing wrong. No, but what we're trying to say is it is quite easy to see here what we're striving to do. We're trying to keep pelvis and upper body straight. It's not perfect, as you see, but sometimes it's really, really good. And then we're trying to make, as Hannah said, hip joints, knee joint, and ankle joint all move with a sort of good elasticity, and they are joint in their efforts, so to speak. Also, you can see that when she changes from posting to the trot into sitting down, she's able to do that just while the horse moves freely forward. The horse moves pretty nicely, even better over the back while she's posting to the trot, I believe, which is probably why she does that. And then when she sits down, he brings his hind legs a little bit more under, but after a little while, the back sort of struggles to keep up. The strides shorten, and the rider will start posting again.
I actually asked her to do both, just to show the difference and show how the hip joint is moving when you're posting and when you're sitting. And it's interesting to see how it influences the horse as well. So and also when you're training without stirrups, one of the goals of doing that is to, as you said, to get longer legs. And you don't get longer legs.
Oh, come on. I always sell that in my clinics.
Yeah, but you get like more relaxed hip joints or and hip flexors, because often it's the muscles in the front of the thigh that is too tense, so they're lifting the knee. Or
tilting the pelvis.
Tilting the pelvis. So that is what we're going to talk a lot about. So let's look at Helen again. You know Helen from some streams ago. I've asked Helen if we could use one of her videos once more, and she was happy to say yes.
All right.
And it's like 8411 is the video, because Helen and I, we have something in common. We have our bodies like to rattle because the psoas and the hip flexors are too short. You see here?
Yeah.
And she's doing it just a couple of strides, because it's hard for the horse when the rider's body is rattling a little, like, if you understand what I mean by rattling, because it feels like that when your body is doing this thing, that it's not stable in the midsection. So
you can see the spine is moving quite a lot. And you can also argue that there's movement in the hip joints, but this isn't the movement we want.
No, it's closing instead of opening.
Yes.
And
so what we're looking at is that every time the rider and horse land, the pelvis tilts forward. You see that? That's what we're looking at. And if that is a problem, then we know then that, or we don't know, but you might think that means the front side of the thigh is too short. But that isn't necessarily true. It is one of the possibilities. And another possibility is that the psoas complex is too dominant in the movement compared to the other musculature. And if that is the case, we by now know where the psoas, right? It's that inside muscle that goes along the spine and the inside through the tenderloin. It goes through your pelvis and attaches to the inside of the thigh. And you can almost, if you're a geek like us, you can see that what's happening here is that the psoas is doing a lot of the work, and the butt, with all its gluteus muscles and all that, and the hamstrings are not doing enough, nor are the abs and all the other muscles around the midsections. They are not doing enough either.
They can't, because the psoas is blocking everything.
So now we come into one of the main questions or main things that we are pointing to in this video, and that is, in this specific case, what's going to happen if we take the stirrups away is that it's going to pull even more on the pelvis. Because if there is no support from the stirrups here, as you can see, she's pulling the legs up out of the stirrups.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons you would like to have longer legs, as it were, right? So, but the problem isn't that the musculature isn't flexible enough. It is that the wrong muscles are doing the job at the wrong time.
So a rider like that needs help from the stirrup to carry the weight of the leg.
Yes.
It's not for balancing. It's for carrying the weight of the leg so she can concentrate on sitting as well as she can at this moment. And I've been doing this myself for many years because I have got like 5 children.
Yep.
And that takes a toll on the abs muscles, and then you get difficulties in sitting straight, and you end up with a similar problem that Helen has. She's working very diligently on this problem, so she's improving a lot, and I think she's really kind to let us learn from this video. And we might, shall we just dive into some of the other videos?
We need to see more videos, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would like to see something more about this psoas system, either a contrast to it or maybe more of the same problem. Do we have anything like that?
All the others are riders who ride at our place, and they have they are in different stages of training away from the wobbly phase or the stiff phase. And so we've taken some of them
how about
without stirrups and some of them with.
We started with something that looked pretty good, and then we moved into very, very wobbly. Do we have something on the quite opposite side of very wobbly?
So it's very stiff.
Yes, more stiff
like
than wobbly.
me, perhaps.
Because either you or this one, maybe.
Yeah, we can do that.
I don't know. You would have to help me think.
We just, as we usually do, we just take a video and we talk about it.
All right.
Yeah. So let's take 99.29. That's Espen riding bareback.
Yep.
So, and I took the video, but you haven't seen it before, so you must comment.
All right. So what we see here is a rider that sits pretty well, quite straight, pulls his legs up ever so little, a little bit too much forward with the leg. I like the upper part, the thigh, if you like. But that quite often that is a thing that happens when you ride bareback.
Yeah.
It's extremely difficult to sit with your legs in the correct position because the horse is kind of flat on top or round or whatever you want to call it, but not pointy at least. So it becomes really, really wide and a very acute angle for your hips to be allowed into. When we've said that, the horse moves pretty nice for this horse, relaxed. Moving forward, licking his mouth. Rider looks comfortable. He told me that he was a bit uncomfortable for like 5 strides, and then he's like, oh, it's this again. I know now. This rider has a completely different set of challenges compared to what we saw Helen do and what we will see you struggling with later. He's much more towards the stiff end of the spectrum. So we can put it this way. Espen is extremely strong compared to how light he is. There is no superfluous anything on that body. He's just extremely strong, but he's also struggling with flexibility. And that is why you can see that the knee looks like it wants to jump up and forward. You see that? And that is So the problem here isn't a psoas related problem. It is an everything related problem. All the muscles want to be at too high a tone, so too much tension in the muscle all the time. And that is a specific problem for this specific rider. And of course, it is probably relatable to about half of you and probably not relatable at all to the other half, I should suppose. But it makes for a completely different pattern. And with that stiffness, maybe riding bareback will help, maybe not. That depends on...
You can see that he's sometimes using his seat like following the movement, like there.
Yeah.
You can see that his bum lifts forwards for each step.
Yeah.
And that is, I guess, easier to feel when you're riding, or you're really close to the horse's skin.
In some instances, it can be easier to feel, but it is important to understand that the saddle will exaggerate the movement of the horse. So sometimes, but hear me out, sometimes the saddle and your riding in the saddle will make the horse less moving through the back. And sometimes the riding bareback will free up the back, and that's why it feels like it moves better. Not because you can feel it better, but because it's actually happening more. So those things, quite often, it's very difficult to know whether the change is in you, or if the change is in the horse, or if it's the connection between the two that has changed.
We can, in one of the other videos, I asked him to use his leg more like in a more collecting position, because that is difficult when you're riding bareback, because of exactly the same thing that you said, that the horse is more flat on top.
Yeah.
And when you're riding in the saddle, there is a twist that sort of lifts the middle of the midline of the saddle up, so that your legs can sort of fall slant down like that, and not directly out. And then it's easier to get around the trunk of the horse and sort of hold the contact with the lower leg in the position where the horse is feeling the impulse to collect more.
Yeah.
Shall we try one of the others?
Let's have a look at the one that you were talking about.
Yeah, I think it's 9930.
Let's have a look.
At least one of them. Yeah, he's sitting more straight upwards, and Valiant is like, what are you doing now? You can see here that he's very good at moving with the horse's movement, so he's not he's concentrating on not being stiff in the hip joint.
And it looks to me like it's difficult, and it looks like keeping the leg back is it doesn't work properly.
It is more difficult.
Yes,
you have to, because you know, when your thigh is like going straight out, then it's difficult to you haven't got.
Yeah, and it's in this specific case, and for many others, the thigh can't go far enough out, so it goes forward instead.
Yep.
And this goes out to those of you who might think that, oh, but I get my leg in the perfect position. If you do, chances are you're on the fork. So you're sitting, you're tilting your pelvis too much forward. Quite often that happens. I'm not saying that you specifically, but it is quite likely. Quite often that is the thing. And if that isn't the thing, then your seat is magnificent and you shouldn't have a problem anyway. So
yeah. So let's try the last one with Espen. That is 9931.
All right. That's more relaxed again.
And you can see that he's trying to bend his knee to get to that point where, perpendicular, under his hip joint, but it's impossible to get there. That is the difficult part of riding bareback. It's very difficult to get your leg in the right position.
Yeah.
So we can have another example of that. That is Mia with Mugabe.
Yeah.
And that is 9926.
Another example of bareback.
Bareback, yes.
All right. Yeah.
And Mugabe is he wants to go very much on like behind the vertical that day, so he needed to be allowed to go like very long. But you can see that Mia is sitting, trying to sit with the movement of the horse, but it's difficult to get the leg in the right position.
Yeah, we can actually. I'll point out a thing here that's this is extremely important, and this is important not only for this particular video, but it will show you guys one of the things that we are talking about all the time. Can you see that the back is swinging ridiculously much?
Yeah.
So, the back is supposed to be able to swing a lot, but this swings sort of too much. That means that this horse is at the moment not stabilizing himself, for which there are many reasons, few of which are the rider's fault, if any. But it is almost impossible, and you can see it, to sit this loosely swinging back. You can see that it's like a whip movement. So it moves softly and then struck, and you get a really crack of the whip movement at the end, which almost lifts Mia out of the saddle.
Yep.
Even if this is just a soft, small little trot, it almost throws her out of the saddle, out of her seat. I'm sorry, I spoke too soon. But I think you can see what I'm talking about, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that is, of course, that's what happens, or those two things, the one that he wants to be way behind and that he's too loose in the top line, they are one and the same thing. If the top line has the right tonus, the right connection throughout, then he'll lift his nose up and forward. Here, that seems to be not possible. And it's not the rider sitting there pulling, I can see that clearly. So, here is another thing. But it's an important thing then, that the swinging of the back isn't a big, it's not a huge thing.
No.
If it swings, if it feels like you're being slapped out of the saddle or out of your seat, then you are, and you need to rethink something. You can see also that the back drops really deep sometimes. So sometimes it drops really deep and it looks like it's disconnected from the pelvis. And you can see the pelvis tilting from side to side as well. Over here somewhere, here you see, really drops. And then he kind of stretches down and kind of gets his back up and tries to re-stabilize a bit, which he's doing a fair job with. But this is too much swing in the back. So it's too loose. In this specific case.
So we're gonna watch the same horse with another rider with the saddle.
All right. Yeah.
That's 9915.
And that's the same, that's the same session even.
Yeah, that's the same session. And this is a rider that has injured her knee. And you see, she hasn't been riding for a long time, so she was borrowing this horse because he's so calm. But you can see that it's difficult to sit to that shot. So she needs the help of the stirrup to carry the leg.
And you see that even with the stirrup, it's hard. And I know that many people will say that, but it's easier when you don't have the stirrup. Yeah, but sometimes it's easier because you can't feel that you would have lost the stirrup by now.
True.
And many things like that happen. So I want us to have a look at what's going on in this rider's hips. Not quite enough, and some of that comes out in the knee straightening out every stride, and some of it comes out in the foot pulling up out of the stirrup. But also remember, that horse still, as you see, he curls himself in, and that's because his top line isn't carrying properly at the moment. So
let's go to I've got some videos of me as well.
Hey!
Yeah, so 7200. Yeah. and I've got a lot of clothes on, so it's, but you can see and this, I wanted to show this. This exercise is really good for problems with riding without stirrups. I did change my position in the saddle, and then I'm leaning backwards and lifting my knees and actually shortening the psoas and activating the psoas
and activating the rest of the hip flexors as well.
Yeah, so I'm activating the muscles that and that are my the big problems of me riding without stirrups.
Yep.
And then it's sort of what do you call that when you're like this training when you
PNF?
Yes.
Proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation.
Mm-hmm. That is also what I showed in the Helen's video when I was like holding her leg when she was pressing against my hand.
Yeah.
And then we let go, and then the muscle, the stiff muscle relaxes more.
Yep.
And that is what happens with me there. When I do that, and then I let go of the leg, it's easier for me to control my upper body and my pelvis, and just let the leg hang there and relax in the leg afterwards. Yep. We'll see in the next movie. And also, in order to do that, I have to activate my abs muscles.
Yep.
It's just like doing a sort of a sit-up.
Yeah. Well, it's to lift your legs up is also a good exercise for that. Imagine you hanging in a pull-up bar and lifting your knees up, which is what you're doing here. Sort of, only you're sitting on a moving object while doing the same. So you have to stabilize a lot through the midsection in this one, while pulling your legs up, which is one way to separate the stabilization of the spine from the movement of the hip joint, which is what you're trying to do. It's an important point here that I feel the need to sort of point out this. When we are discussing these things, we are not aiming towards the average. That's not what we're talking towards. We always talk towards what would be really good to do. Not perfection, but it's kind of upwards at least, right? We're pointing up all the time. So with that in mind, quite often if you're too stiff in a joint, like in this case, too stiff in the hip joint, especially when extending the hip, when moving the knee back. And strangely, if you lift your knees up like you did there, you can stretch them out more.
Yeah.
That's really weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah.
I hadn't tried that exercise for many years.
No.
So I did it just for now, and then I was like, wow, that was efficient.
And this is why we always aim towards and always talk warmly about training and practicing your movements, because most of us, we just don't do it enough. So all the things we try to do are we're trying to sneak training into everyday movements. That's because it's the most efficient way to get training done. Most efficient. It's easiest to get done. So you can do a ton of that. If you think about stretching, if you're standing on your desk, you can lift your knee a bit. All sorts of little things like that will help you at the same time, of course, as trying those things on horseback. But the important thing is that moving those muscles more, but in specific, it's important that it needs to have exercise specificity, which it does here. The specificity we're after here is the spine needs to stay stabilized and the hip joint needs to be mobilized at the same time. So you need to be able to flex your hips and extend your hips while keeping the spine stabilized.
So you're forcing the man in the brain to coordinate in a better way.
Yeah, and he needs to practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we look at me trotting with stirrups first? That is 7202.
With stirrups, is it?
Yeah. and I'm quite short stirrups here because then they carry my leg. So I'm trying to work with getting the front of the thighs to relax, and so as the hip joint, the hip flexors must relax in order to help, or in order for my body to be able to let the horse's movement through.
Yeah. So letting the movement through is on one side, relaxing those. On the other side, also activating the opposite muscle. So the buttocks and the hamstrings in particular.
Yeah.
But what's happening here is you're doing a pretty good job of being stabilized.
Yeah.
And much better than you usually do. And it is not mostly because you are stronger. It is mostly because you're moving freer through the hip.
Yeah.
Very good.
And I have like my basic problem is the same as Helen's problem, but I've been training for a longer time at avoiding it than she has.
Yeah.
So I'm cheering for you, Helen. And then let's see that 7203, that is without the stirrups.
Right. So the first thing that struck me is that it's half speed, isn't it?
No.
But you are not able to allow the horse to move anywhere near as freely.
No. You can see that
It looks
the whole leg is much stiffer.
Yes.
And it's much better than I usually am able to do without stirrups.
You're doing pretty good without stirrups here, actually. And when I was filming this, I thought this looked really good, and I didn't notice that speed change. Can we roll back to 7202 again, please?
You said the leg is much more like relaxed.
Yeah, and you see the horse is moving much faster and freer. And roll 7203 again. See? It looks like everything moves in slow motion. And that is completely natural, because the tension in your hip joints is now higher because you have to hold the weight of your own leg.
Yeah.
And the reason you have to hold the weight of the leg is that you're not strong enough in the midsection to allow a big enough movement through the leg or through the hip joint without the help of the stirrup.
And not flexible enough in the hip flexors, and not strong enough in the hip extensions.
Yes.
Yeah.
The ass and the hamstrings
The
put
bum.
it. The boom. The hamstrings.
That is the seat, the
Yes.
seat muscles.
Yeah.
The gluteus.
So it's quite interesting to see, actually. I thought it was quite obvious what happened in those two last videos.
Yeah, with me.
So the thing there is that, as you saw with the same rider trying to do to the best of their abilities, we get different things trained. But I think we shall go back to those two videos more, because I want to take them apart even further and see what are the good things you're training when you don't have stirrups, and what are the good things you're training when you do have stirrups.
Yeah.
Because there might be good things and bad things about both, and that's what we're trying to expose in this
So then
stream.
you must decide which video that we are.
Roll 7202 again. I'm just thinking, guys. This is as if I'm teaching you and I go silent, you all say, "Oh no!" This is that moment. And 7203. Thank you. I need to see this one again. I got distracted by the question. This is so difficult to see properly. But something will come out of this. I promise, guys. Now let me see 7202 again. All right. I think I have a start on what's going on. So when Hannah is riding with her stirrups here, the movement in the hip and the knee is more. It is easier to see. There's a little bit more movement in the hip and the knee here than it is when we watch 7203 again.
Yeah.
And you can see, and I think the reason is you're squeezing your legs together at the very top. You remember the first time we found that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
And that stops the movement in the hips, even if everything else does its job. So, and it also explains how your hamstrings aren't that bad, but the bum isn't strong yet, right? And the opposite of the bum isn't the front side of the thigh, it's the inside of the thigh. Because it rotates, right? They rotate the opposite direction. We talked about rotational movement last time, and that's also a main ingredient here. So you see the knees want to roll in, you see that?
Yeah.
They don't want to roll out. We need them to roll out and away from the horse, and they don't do that now. So there's some holding on thing going on there. It might be just dampening the movement, or it might be holding on, or it might be that you're just not strong enough in the bum to lift through.
Yes, I'm not strong enough in my bum, and I'm very strong in my hip flexors.
Yes. So when we roll back to 7202 again, then we will see that what's happening here is that, as we saw, the knee moves better, right?
Yeah.
And that's because the hamstrings have an easier job being active when you have the stirrups. Yeah. But the hips don't move very well still, because the buttocks can't do that job yet.
But they're getting stronger and stronger. So Helen had a question here that's really good.
Yeah.
And that is relevant right now. And I can read it aloud. Yeah. Is there a good way we can... here it comes. A good way we can activate the buttocks and hamstrings while we are actually on horseback? Is self-prodding the answer? And why does it feel good to ride without stirrups at walk? Or is this my body lying to me? Which I know it can do.
Oh, very good question. Self-prodding is absolutely one of the answers, for sure. It's always good to do that. But there are other ideas you can use. You can, for instance, if you just sort of grab onto the horse with the inside/backside of your thigh and try and lift your bum up and forward, then you will activate your butt to some degree. And one thing that I like to do, try this once when you are able to not wear shoes, or wear shoes or boots with a really soft sole. You try to put your feet on the stirrups so that you have the balls of your foot just on the edge of the stirrup, and then try to think about gripping around with your toes. And then as you do that, try and pull your stirrups back all the way from up at the hip joint. If you do that, that will activate your hamstrings. It will also activate the backside of your calves a bit, and it will help your buttocks as well a little bit. So if you do that at the walk with the stirrups, that will activate that whole back chain. When all that is said, why does it feel good to ride without stirrups? It might be that it actually is good for you to ride without stirrups at the walk, because you tend to be blocked up in your hip joints. Or it might be that it allows your pelvis to roll the way it wants to do, but you don't want it to do. So you have to spot if it's the one or the other, and that, which is sort of the whole point of what we're trying to say in this video, that sometimes you need stirrups, sometimes you need not stirrups. Mm-hmm. And that is, you can't say that this is always better with stirrups and this is always better without stirrups. You can't say that because it differs between the two of us, for instance.
And actually in that last video where I was riding without stirrups, it felt good.
Yeah.
Because I could feel that it was stretching in the right places.
Yes.
So even though I look a little more stiff there, I was training well.
Yep.
So there are many. This is so complex. So it's a good thing to vary as well.
Yeah.
And also the posting to the trot is really good for activating your bum, because if you do that right, with you lifting up and sort of move your pelvis over the pommel for every step, then you have to open your hip joint.
Yeah. Lift your unnameables forward over the pommel.
So, and then open the hip joint every time you rise. Mm-hmm. Then that action actually, you can't open your hip joint without using your bum. That is the hip extensors, the muscles that are opening the hip.
We need to address one thing. We have addressed this once before, but it is extremely complex, and I'm not certain that I'm quite certain I don't have the full understanding of this whole movement. But follow me on this one. If this is your femur with its with the neck of the femur, like that, and then this is the pelvis, like this. And you have one femur on the opposite side as well, of course. There you go. The weird things happen if you go from seated to up in front of the cantle. When you move your hip like that in front of the cantle, you'll see, if I find an angle here, you'll see that this rolls. You see that? So it rolls the whole thing. So a whole lot of flexion or outward rotation happens as you move forward, even if your thigh stays in the exact same position all the time. Outward rotation happens in the joint, even so. And if you do not have very well developed buttocks, then you cannot do that outward rotation. And what's going to happen instead is that you're going to roll your pelvis forward like that, instead of rolling your femur up, which is very important in regards to Helen's question, but also in regards to what's happening when you are riding without stirrups as opposed to riding with stirrups.
And of course, riding without stirrups also makes you balance more. That is if you're not squeezing your legs together and just to keep yourself in the saddle.
Absolutely.
Because many people do that, and then that is not helpful.
No. We'll have a look at that 7203 again. Yeah, Helen, that's monkey toes, that's correct. All right, so what's happening to Hanne's body otherwise is she's definitely trying to stretch, and she's concentrating really hard. And you can see that you're trying really hard to keep your upper body balanced and straight and strong. And that is an extremely important way to train.
Yeah.
Anything that will push you off balance just a little bit makes a big difference in how your central nervous system trains this.
Yeah.
Because no matter how much we talk about muscles and stiffness and all that, most of what's going on is that you're training your central nervous system to do a new movement. And this new movement is stay stabilized through your trunk and stay loose in the hips at the same time. And it is obvious here that you're really trying to keep your upper body stabilized. It is obvious because you can see that your head tries to nod a little bit more. That's typical of you when you try to really stabilize. And it means that you're stabilizing better. It just means that there isn't quite enough movement up here around the throat to be able to keep your head back at the same time, which is really, really hard if you can't do it. We've talked about this before, that with bodybuilders and such that train hard, and some of them juice hard as well, as they say. They have extremely strong muscles between the shoulder blades and up the neck, and that's because of the high testosterone levels that keeps the body up and high like that. It's really hard, but if you have all that muscle, it's not hard anymore. And then that is the easiest way to move around, right?
And also, when you're stabilizing your upper body and the pelvis together, then it's easier to move the hip joint.
Yep.
That's the Stabmo rule.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you, a very good way to train the flexibility in your hip joint is to train stability in the upper body.
Yep.
And you could do that. Yeah.
So
and you could do that in the rising trot as well.
Absolutely. Should we have a look at the first one again to see the rising trot?
Mm-hmm. That was a good idea.
0001.
You can see that when she's sitting, the hip joint is moving.
Yep.
And then this is the way the hip joint should move when you're doing the rising trot.
Yep.
And you can see that the thigh is ending up like completely
perpendicular to the ground.
Yes.
when you're up above the cantle.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, the pommel.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, and then now she's moving with the horse, so that the hip joint takes the movement and not the waist.
Yeah. She breaks a little bit just below the rib cage,
but not much.
But no, not much at all.
For the point is not to be stiff, but it's to be stable.
Yeah.
And then because the body, the nervous system will protect the spine. The nervous system protects itself, and if the spine is a little like this, then you're not allowed to use your seat muscles. So the hip joint will block.
All right.
So keep the spine stable, and then the hip joint will eventually start moving.
Yeah. All right. So when we set out to sort of have a look at this no stirrup November, or whatever people have it, at our place, it's to not wear your stirrups in November is perhaps one of the hardest months. The ground is hard and slippery, and it's just, it's really maybe not the best month. Maybe we'll wait for Fluffy March to do it then instead, when there's a lot more snow. But some of the things that we sort of have reached as let's call it conclusions for this. I'll just throw some out there, and we can discuss the conclusions as well. We find that quite often it is advantageous to ride without stirrups in order to provoke other mistakes or faults or weaknesses that you otherwise can't feel or find because you're used to riding in the saddle. So the changing a little bit of the equipment is always smart.
Yeah.
It's done a lot in weightlifting, for instance. To just change the stance of your feet will change what the central nervous system does, and hence your training will keep progressing for a longer time. Yeah. So as just for being a change to your normal routine, riding without stirrups or bareback is probably a good thing.
It's a very good thing. And also, if you ride with a saddle with big knee pads, that is pushing your knees back, then you will, if your psoas or hip flexors are too short, then you will end up sway backed and unstable in your back.
Yeah, and with a anterior tilt in your pelvis.
So then, if that is your problem, then it's a very good thing to ride without a saddle, because then your knees are free to move forwards in the way they need to do in order for you to stay stable in your back.
Yeah, and quite often that will kick you off into finding, oh, is this a straight back now? Is this where my pelvis is supposed to sit? And then you can restart your journey or find a way around your problem or through the problem that has hindered you from doing lots of different things that also are important.
Yeah, and also that might be, Helen, the reason why I think it's nice to ride I don't know if that was bareback, but sometimes that it helps to sit in a different way so that your knees are not blocked.
Yep, absolutely. So they're not pushed back, because there are so many things that happen anyway when you're on a horse. For instance, the horse is so wide and your legs are so far apart that it's whenever I show this to people, I just put a mark on the ground underneath their stirrups, and then I walk the horse away and I stand in those. It looks absolutely ridiculous. And it's like, but you can't stand like that. So, well, you're sitting like that, so I guess I'll have to stand like this then. Half seated, half standing, as it were. That's also an important point. You're supposed to be half seated, half standing. And that if you're bareback, you're fully seated.
Yeah, it's like a chair seat.
It will provoke a chair seat unless it provokes a fork seat, which it also quite often does.
Yeah, it does. So you must look out for those areas when you're riding bareback. But it's a very good thing to do that once in a while, just to
absolutely
to challenge your balance and challenge your feel and many other things.
Yep, absolutely.
Just so you know, we just want you to know all these different things that it might be a challenge.
You said it felt good to ride without stirrups?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you describe how?
It was because of that exercise I did with lifting my knees first, and I got actually my gluteus medius just cramped up when I did that. So
the rotational thing was something there for you then?
Yeah. So I'm going to do that more. I think it's a very good exercise for people who have the same problem as Helena and I.
Cool. How do you fix a lazy back up? So I'm slightly confused by this question. We'll answer it in two different ways. Maybe it's a back up.
Yeah, or it's a back
that needs to be up.
Yeah. I think both are good questions, but we haven't got the time to answer them well now. But
we'll touch on them.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Come on.
All right. So if the question is that the horse is lazy in backing up, then I would say that the horse is most likely not attentive in its hind legs at all. And then a very nice thing I find is to work on this. If this is your horse and its pelvis and its hind legs down here somewhere, if you can make him feel like he's sitting back just a little bit, then release your hand, your rein, before the horse starts moving back. And let him rock forward again. And then try and rock him back again, and then rock forward. And then when you've done that a few times, maybe three of these and then a break, and 3 of these until you have 20 or 15 or something like that, let's say. And then you roll back, and then you touch the horse backwards one more time until it takes one stride. When it takes one stride back, release everything and just say good boy. And then keep repeating that, and the horse will then start giving you 2 strides the next time. And this becomes 6 strides pretty quick, so that shouldn't be a problem at all. If it's a lazy back, we can think about that as what we saw with Mugabe, the Black Frisian. His back was lazy in that. He's absolutely just sloppily swinging softly through, right? Not being stabilized. That is a really big thing, and that's what this whole series of streams are about. To make the horse stabilize correctly through the midsection is the same job as making us stabilizing correctly through the midsection. It's hard. You have to do your sit-ups. You have to keep your own body straight and up and strong. And you have to do that over and over, and you have to do a bunch of transitions, and there's many things that you need to do. There's no quick fix on getting the horses back in the right shape or the right form of movement when the horse is moving. That's a really big job, and it cannot be answered in just a couple of minutes, I'm afraid. But watch all the other streams and you'll get plenty of hints on exactly that, that's for sure. Streams are also available on YouTube. Our channel on YouTube is called Trollspeilet.
Yeah.
Yay! And we are posting. Have we posted all our videos so far? Not quite.
I think we're doing twice a week of the old ones.
Yeah.
And we're gonna start to. Streaming directly on YouTube
eventually.
Yeah.
But at least more and more of our older streams are already available on YouTube, and you can go there and find them there and click like and write a stupid comment or a good comment or a fun comment, or you can nasty question or a nice question, all of that, and we will try and leave a thumbs up if you like it. Leave a thumbs down if you don't like it. Leave a thumbs up if you don't like it too, by all means. But you're allowed to do both, of course. Gotcha. Happy with that. And that is more or less what we have had to say today, I believe. So happy No Stirrup November. You can try it in December as well, or even a later month if you like the fluffy ground better for your balancing projects. We believe that if you keep your mind about you, you can do both things, and they will both help you become a better rider. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you.